He smiles. It's 𝐿𝓊, he says. 𝐿𝓊 Kincaid. I sigh, sinking into myself. That's a really great name. Why do you sound sad about it? Because, I'd give anything for a great name. You don't like the name Lily? I tilt my head and cock an eyebrow. My last name is Bloom. He's quiet. I can feel him trying to hold back his pity. I know, it's awful. It's the name of a 2-year-old little girl, not a 23-year-old woman. A 2-year-old girl will have the same name no matter how old she gets. Names aren't something we eventually grow out of. Lily Bloom. 20. Unfortunately for me, I say. But what makes it even worse is that I absolutely love gardening. I love flowers, plants, growing things. It's my passion. It's always been my dream to open a florist shop, but I'm afraid if I did, people wouldn't think my desire was authentic. They would think I was trying to capitalize off my name and that being a florist isn't really my dream job. Maybe so, he says. But what's that matter? It doesn't, I suppose. I catch myself whispering, Lily blooms, quietly. I can see him smiling a little bit. It really is a great name for a florist. But I have a master's degree in business. I'd be downgrading, don't you think? I work for the biggest marketing firm in Boston. Owning your own business isn't downgrading, he says. I raise an eyebrow. Unless it flops. He nods in agreement. Unless it flops, he says. So what's your middle name? I groan, which makes him perk up. You mean it gets worse? I drop my head in my hands and nod. Rose. I shake my head. Worse. Violet. I wish. I cringe and then mutter, Blossom. There's a moment of silence. Goddamn, he says softly. Yeah, Blossom is my mother's maiden name and my parents thought it was fate that their last names were synonyms. So of course when they had me, a flower was their first choice. Your parents must be real assholes. One of them was. My father died this week. He glances at me. Nice try. I'm not falling for that. I'm serious. That's why I came up here tonight. I think I just needed a good cry. He stares at me suspiciously for a moment to make sure I'm not pulling his leg. He doesn't apologize for the blunder. Instead, his eyes grow a little more curious, like his intrigue is actually authentic. Were you close? That's a hard question. I rest my chin on my arms and look down at the street again. I don't know, I say with a shrug. As his daughter, I loved him. But as a human, I hated him. I can feel him watching me for a moment, and then he says, I like that. Your honesty. He likes my honesty. I think I might be blushing. We're both quiet again for a while, and then he says, Do you ever wish people were more transparent? He picks at a piece of chipped stucco with his thumb until it breaks loose. He flicks it over the ledge. I feel like everyone fakes who they really are, when deep down we're all equal amounts of screwed up. Some of us are just better at hiding it than others. Either his high is setting in, or he's just very introspective. Either way, I'm okay with it. My favorite conversations are the ones with no real answers. I don't think being a little guarded is a negative thing, I say. Naked truths aren't always pretty. He stares at me for a moment. Naked truths, he repeats. I like that. He turns around and walks to the middle of the rooftop. He adjusts the back on one of the patio loungers behind me and lowers himself onto it. It's the kind you lie on, so he pulls his hands behind his head and looks up at the sky. I claim the one next to him and adjust it until I'm in the same position as him. Tell me a naked truth, Lily. Pertaining to what? He shrugs. I don't know. Something you aren't proud of. Something that will make me feel a little less screwed up on the inside. He's staring up at the sky, waiting on me to answer. My eyes follow the line of his jaw, the curve of his cheeks, the outline of his lips. His eyebrows are drawn together in contemplation. I don't understand why, but he seems to need conversation right now. I think about his question and try to find an honest answer. When I come up with one, I look away from him and back up to the sky. My father was abusive, not to me, to my mother. Would get so angry when they fought that sometimes he would hit her. When that happened, he would spend the next week or two making up for it. He would do things like buy her flowers or take us out to a nice dinner. Sometimes he would buy me stuff because he knew I hated it when they fought. When I was a kid, I found myself looking forward to the nights they would fight. Because I knew if he hit her, the 2 weeks that followed would be great. I pause. I'm not sure I've ever admitted that to myself. Of course if I could, I would have made it to where he never touched her. But the abuse was inevitable with their marriage, and it became our norm. When I got older, I realized that not doing something about it made me just as guilty. I spent most of my life hating him for being such a bad person, but I'm not so sure I'm much better. Maybe we're both bad people. Ryle looks over at me with a thoughtful expression. Lily, he says pointedly. There is no such thing as bad people. We're all just people who sometimes do bad things. I open my mouth to respond, but his words strike me silent. We're all just people who sometimes do bad things. I guess that's true in a way. No one is exclusively bad, nor is anyone exclusively good. Some are just forced to work harder at suppressing the bad. Your turn, I tell him. Based on his reaction, I think he might not want to play his own game. He sighs heavily and runs a hand through his hair. He opens his mouth to speak, but then clamps it shut again. He thinks for a bit, and then finally speaks. I watched a little boy die tonight. The younger brother was holding it and it went off by accident. He was only 5 years old. My stomach flips. I think this may be a little too much truth for me. There was nothing that could be done by the time he made it to the operating table. Everyone around, nurses, other doctors, they all felt so sorry for the family. Those poor parents, they said. But when I had to walk into the waiting room and tell those parents that their child didn't make it, I didn't feel an ounce of sorrow for them. I wanted them to suffer. I wanted them to feel the weight of their ignorance for keeping a loaded gun within access of 2 innocent children. I wanted them to know that not only did they just lose a child, they just ruined the entire life of the one who accidentally pulled the trigger. Jesus Christ, I wasn't prepared for something so heavy. I can't even conceive how a family moves past that. That poor boy's brother, I say. I can't imagine what that's going to do to him seeing something like that. Ryle flicks something off the knee of his jeans. It'll destroy him for life, that's what it'll do. I turn on my side to face him, lifting my head up onto my hand. Is it hard, seeing things like that every day? He gives his head a slight shake. It should be a lot harder, but the more I'm around death, the more it just becomes a part of life. I'm not sure how I feel about that. He makes eye contact with me again. Give me another one, he says. I feel like mine was a little more twisted than yours. I disagree, but I tell him about the twisted thing I did a mere 12 hours. My mother asked me 2 days ago if I would deliver the 𝐿𝓊𝒸𝓈 at my father's funeral today. I told her I didn't feel comfortable, that I might be crying too hard to speak in front of a crowd, but that was a lie. I just didn't want to do it because I feel like eulogies should be delivered by those who respected the deceased. And I didn't much respect my father. Did you do it? I nod. Yeah, this morning. I sit up and pull my legs beneath me as I face him. You want to hear it? He smiles. Absolutely. I fold my hands in my lap and inhale a breath. I had no idea what to say. About an hour before the funeral, I told my mother I didn't want to do it. She said it was simple and that my father would have wanted me to do it. She said all I had to do was walk up to the podium and say 5 great things about my father. So, that's exactly what I did. Ryle lifts up onto his elbow, appearing even more interested. He can tell by the look on my face that it gets worse. Oh, no, Lily. What did you do? Here, let me just reenact it for you. I stand up and walk around to the other side of my chair. I stand tall and act like I'm looking out over the same crowded room I was met with this morning. I clear my throat. Hello, my name is Lily Bloom, daughter of the late Andrew Bloom. Thank you all for joining us today as we mourn his loss. I wanted to take a moment to honor his life by sharing with you 5 great things about my father. The first thing, I look down at Ryle and shrug. He sits up. What do you mean? I take a seat on my lounge chair and lie back down. I stood up there for 2 solid minutes without saying another word. There wasn't one great thing I could say about that man, so I just stared silently at the crowd until my mother realized what I was doing and had my uncle remove me from the podium. Ryle tilts his head. Are you kidding me? You gave the 𝐿𝓊𝒸𝓈 at your own father's funeral. I nod. I'm not proud of it. I don't think. I mean, if I had my way, he would have been a much better person and I would have stood up there and talked for an hour. Ryle lies back down. Wow, he says, shaking his head. You're kind of my hero. You just roasted a dead guy. That's tacky. Yeah, well, naked truth hurts. I laugh. Your turn. I can't top that, he says. I'm sure you can come close. I'm not sure I can. I roll my eyes. Yes you can. Don't make me feel like the worst person out of the 2 of us. Tell me the most recent thought you've had that most people wouldn't say out loud. He pulls his hands up behind his head and looks me straight in the eye. I want to fuck you. My mouth falls open, then I clamp it shut again. I think I might be speechless. He shoots me a look of innocence. You asked for the most recent thought, so I gave it to you.